Hello, everybody. I have a story to tell you. It's a short one, but it will be worth it. Make sure you have a hot beverage with you, or a burger, and let's do this. Many years ago, when I was but a small child, I was at a friend's house. We were close friends who used to live in the same apartment complex, but at some point his family moved outside the city. While the distance to the new home from the city is not very long, about 20 kilometers, it is located at a sparsely populated area at the foothills of a nearby mountain. Some might call it a village. It was Friday afternoon when I took the bus to his place and was supposed to return on Saturday evening, with plenty of time to prepare for school. If it was summer, I would have stayed more, but unfortunately that was not the case that time. The plan was to stay overnight. The good thing was his mother left us there alone, as she had some reason, I don't remember what, to be out of the area. Before you blame our parents for leaving us alone, I am Gen X. It was not strange at the time. In fact, I have several stories which happened with similar beginnings. But this story is not about what happened the night at my friend's place. That's a story for another time. I was supposed to take a bus back to the city at around 4 p.m. Saturday. Unfortunately, earlier that day there was a problem with the bus service. I don't remember what, perhaps a strike. It was very common at the time in Greece. With his parents gone for another day, and no bus to take me home, I was stuck. No harm done, you'll say, but unfortunately that's not the case. I called home and my father was quite adamant to return that day. With no other solution, he reluctantly told me he was going to come and pick me up in his car. One thing he was known for was not being crazy happy about giving people a lift. Yes, including his son. Add to this that he was working late that day, it was just the best combination to make him be in an excellent mood. He was going to come to pick me up at around 9 p.m. As it is always the case when you are having too much fun, before too long it was nightfall. And with a small-ish delay of perhaps half an hour, my father was there. Mind you, this was before there were mobile phones for everyone and their dog. I wasn't really worried, but it was always annoying when someone was late for something. People my age and older know very well what I'm talking about. He arrived, smiling, but definitely not in a good mood. After saying goodbye to my friend, we left, while it was pitch black. About half the trip was on local small roads and only the last half was on actual proper highway. As with I'm sure other areas of the world, that meant the only light outside was from either the car's lights or the occasional building on the way to the highway. My father was not very chatty. I could sense him not being in a good mood, perhaps even angry. Usually I got to listen to music when I was a passenger in his car, but this time he told me the cassette player was broken and I had to listen to the radio. Unfortunate, as he had quite a collection of music. He had good taste in music. A few stations had either Greek music I didn't care for or talk radio. Still better than nothing. Little did I know this was not going to be the worst part of my night. As we were going at relatively slow speeds and we were slowly approaching the highway, perhaps 5 minutes from it, I noticed something big, very fast, and very dark to move just outside my window, perhaps 2 meters away. It wasn't clear, I could barely see something, and that mostly thanks to whatever light managed to reach the area. At first I couldn't figure out what I was looking at. The first thing that came to my mind was that it was my imagination, quickly followed by shadows because of the lights from the car. But the more time I spent looking at it, the more I was certain there was something there. Not my imagination, not shadows, something more physical. Ever since I remember, I knew a few things, one of which was to never talk to the driver, even more so if the driver was in a bad mood, and your father. I kept silent, though I could feel my heart beating faster. The thing was almost like what would be a completely black blanket, though the type of blanket which flies and follows a car in the middle of the night. I was scared, but I couldn't take my eyes off it. I was hoping for a bright light from some other source to be able to take a better look at it, but nothing happened so far. After a bit more, I decided to take a big risk and talk to my father about it. I was afraid more of what would happen if I startled him than anything else at that point, but I did it anyway. He didn't say anything for the first few seconds after I mentioned I see something weird outside the car. Then he told me in a strict but normal volume voice that I am imagining things and to be quiet. The seconds passed and I was very afraid. I could still barely see whatever it was. What could it possibly be? Then suddenly we passed through a local eklisaki, something which if you are not from Greece you might not know of, I don't know. Basically it's a small construction, usually not more than 50 by 50 centimeters in dimensions and about a meter or so in height at the most. They resemble in shape churches and they tend to have a couple of pictures of saints, a candle or two, and in the very rare cases, more lights. This was one of those rare cases. As we passed by it, there was just enough light to briefly have a better look at whatever was following us. Unfortunately, it did not help that much. The thing was more greyish color than true black. It appeared to be the size of a couple of men at most. The light did not go through it. I was pooping my pants. I turned again to my father to tell him what I saw. He didn't let me say more than "Dad," and he replied that I did not see anything outside and be very quiet, or he will not be happy. Kind of funny, as he was not exactly at his most pleasant that night. Being a kid, I decided that I was more afraid of what my father might do to me than whatever monster might be outside, and I stopped talking, though still scared out of my senses. At that point, my father told me in a slightly more calm voice that we were approaching the highway where there were many lights on, and as we were getting closer to the outskirts of the city, I was glad, but at the same time still terrified. Soon we entered the highway, and as we did, the dark thing outside seemed to lift, to fly off like we left it behind. There was plenty of light on the road, relatively speaking, and I could no longer see it, whatever it was. At the same time, the radio, which was playing at low volume, suddenly stopped. I didn't care that much, though I did find it a bit weird as we were getting closer to the city, not farther away. A few seconds later, there was no traffic on the highway. At all. No incoming traffic, no cars at all. I could see the city lights in the horizon to the front and right of the car, but we were still a few minutes away from entering the city. As I was beginning to feel slightly better, city lights will do that to me. They started trembling. All of them. At the exact same time. It didn't make sense. It's impossible, right? I turned to my father, and As I was doing that, I saw the lights on the side of the road doing the same thing. I couldn't handle it anymore and yelled, "Dad, what's going on?" He said nothing and continued driving and looking ahead. I yelled at him again and still no reaction. He was just looking straight at the road, ignoring me. I put my hands on his right shoulder and tried to shake him a bit to get his attention. He slowly turned his head to look at me in the back seat. He had no face, no features, no eyes, no mouth, nothing. It was completely flat skin. Like the front half of his head was just a flat piece of wood, only it was his skin. He looked at me for a few seconds and I was completely frozen. That was the end of that night. I don't remember anything else that happened after that. Not just that trip, that night, but also the following day. Nothing. My next memories come from me at the school on Monday morning. I don't know what happened. I can't explain it. It never happened again, and I never saw anything like this since.